our panel for you. Still with us, CNN's Nick Robertson and Nada Bashir. Also joining us, Firas Maksad and Khaled Elgindy, both with the Middle East Institute out of Washington, as I understand it today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. And just to get us absolutely squared off, it is not clear how long the IDF believe identification of the body they believe is Sinwar will take, but we are being told, Nat, and let's just get your reporting in here, we are being told it is likely minutes, if not hours, rather than days or weeks, correct?
Yeah, absolutely, Becky. We are still waiting for more updates from Israeli military officials on that, but we understand it could be a matter of hours before we get that confirmation from the Israeli military. This is, of course, a significant development. It would be a huge blow to Hamas, and there are real questions, as we have been discussing, as to whether the killing of Yahya Sinwar, Hamas's leader, if in fact this is confirmed, could provide the opportunity for Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to paint the picture in Israel's eyes of a victory. We know, of course, that the Israeli government has been persistent in reiterating that they are intent on seeing this war through until they believe they have achieved the full eradication of Hamas. We've also then heard from Israeli officials as well as officials in the US acknowledging that the idea behind Hamas is not something that can be entirely destroyed, but they do believe, according to US assessments, that Hamas's military capabilities have now been downgraded to a point where they are no longer in a position to carry out an attack, a massacre such as the scale that we saw on October 7th in Israel. But of course, what we've also seen is the Israeli military continually targeting senior leaders. This would be a significant development if indeed this is confirmed to be Yahya Sinwar.
Right. Firas, let me bring you in here. You are very well sourced across the region where I am, the Arab Gulf, around this region of the Levant as well, and indeed in Washington. Your assessment of what is developing here, if you will, and any information that you can provide at this point.
Good to be with you, Becky. I agree that this is a potential fork in the road that might open up the pathways for a diplomatic outcome here in Gaza, but that is by no means a foregone conclusion. Obviously, there's a sense that Israel right now has escalation dominance, and in many ways, Benjamin Netanyahu sees an opportunity to reset the table, not just in Gaza, but in Lebanon and throughout the Middle East as it relates to Iran. But I can tell you, I mean, talking to these senior officials here and in the region, I've heard it from a senior White House official that as long as Yahya Sinwar is alive, the administration did not think that a ceasefire in Gaza is going to be possible. So this opens up the opportunity.
Sure.
However, we also have to ask the question whether the administration has the political will to bring enough diplomatic wherewithal, enough pressure on Netanyahu to call it a day, call it a victory in Gaza, which then opens up possibilities beyond Gaza. Because as we know now, Hezbollah's former leader, Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah, was looking for a fig leaf from Benjamin Netanyahu in this ceasefire that the administration was hoping to engineer when Bibi Netanyahu took to the UN stage in that speech. Of course, Bibi did not take that opportunity and instead decided to assassinate Nasrallah. So I think we're in a similar moment here where potentially there's a fork in the road, and what the administration does next is going to be pivotal.
And let me just bring you in, Khaled, here, because I know that you've been an advisor to the Palestinian leadership in Ramallah over the years at very strategic periods of time. As the leadership in Ramallah digest the same news that we are all digesting at this point. And again, I have to underscore, we are waiting for further information from the IDF. How will this be landing in Ramallah?
Well, it's an interesting question. I mean, I think the leadership in Ramallah, such as it is probably the least relevant actor in this entire arrangement. I mean, they have no say either in the matters of war or peace in Gaza or the broader region, for that matter. So I think they will be hopeful that this does in fact bring an end to the horrors that we're seeing inside Gaza. but they're not in a position to move that needle one way or the other. But on the
key
broader
architect of the October the 7th. Yeah, go on.
No, I just wanted to address the issue of Sinwar's demise, if in fact it is confirmed. And I agree completely with Firas that that this could be a fork in the road, and it depends entirely on Washington, on the Biden administration willing to use this as an opportunity to bring an end to this this horrific war once and for all. But that will take political will. And so far, we've seen this administration, they've consistently misjudged the Netanyahu government and the lengths that it is willing to go, the extent of its extremist nature. And I think a reasonable Israeli government would decide that here's an opportunity to claim victory, but that assumes that they're looking for an off-ramp, and I think that assumption is unwarranted. I think what we're seeing on the ground in northern Gaza, we're seeing a willingness to use starvation as a weapon. We're seeing massive killing of civilians. There is an attempt to clear the north of its population, and I expect that to proceed unless the U.S. takes a very firm and public stance against it.
And they must have gamed this out. We've been talking about that. There must have been conversations, amongst those at a senior level in the Biden administration, and indeed between the Biden administration and the Netanyahu administration, about what would happen were Sinwar to be killed. A fork in the road, perhaps, then for Gaza, if this plays out the right way. Firas, I do just want to bring you in, and I want to get Nick to just respond to this as well. Gaza, of course, is not the only theatre of war at this point, as we await to find out what the Israelis are likely to do next with regard to retaliation against Iran. We are witness to a war in Lebanon at this point. How does Sinwar's death, if that is indeed what we are reporting at this point, affect what is going on in Lebanon? Firas first.
Yeah, Becky, I mean, I do think that the Lebanon and Gaza theaters are more interrelated than the Iranian theater is, and I'll explain why. Hezbollah, having been dealt these severe blows, including the assassination, essentially the decapitation of its military leadership, and Hassan Nasrallah, its Secretary General, is itching for a ceasefire. We've heard that time and again, including from its Deputy Secretary General only days ago. They need a fig leaf. They and the Iranians who support them cannot decouple from Gaza. They need some kind of an arrangement, some kind of an end to major military operations in Gaza in order to save face and agree to wind down in Lebanon and come out with a new diplomatic outcome, a new security arrangement for South Lebanon and that border with Israel. So in that sense, this might provide the opening for an eventual de-escalation in Lebanon. On Iran, however, I do think that counterstrike, that Israeli response to Iran is forthcoming and is going to be unrelated to this. And there are some thinking here in DC that this might be a multi-stage operation where the initial Israeli response is limited, does not go after oil installation, some of the nuclear infrastructure is contained to military sites and the IRGC. But then when the Iranians themselves respond, there will be a much bigger Israeli operation. And that perhaps would, in terms of time frame and timeline, put that much larger Israeli attack beyond the November 5th election day here, which is crucial in terms of the administration and what it's looking for and what it's pressuring Bibi Netanyahu to do. So I don't think it will have much of an impact as it relates to Iran, but potential impact when it comes to Lebanon.
Yeah, no, fascinating. Look, I've got to take a break. Thank you, everybody. Nick, do stand by. I mean, get your